Anyone who's watched a trophy truck or similar running through whoops at high speed in the desert and watching the suspension movement would have a fairly good idea that it's pretty brutal on the dampers. We're here with Dane from Fox to talk a little bit more about off-road suspension technology. So for a start, Dane, what are the main key differences when it comes to designing a damper for off-road versus street and road race applications?
It really comes down to that environment. So, I mean, our DNA of what we make for a damper goes through everything from what we just launched for our C7 Corvette to what we're standing behind here with this like internal bypass and even our trophy truck. So
what you're saying is basically the technology inside a damper remains the same irrespective of what application you've got it in?
Yeah, so shims, pistons, body material, stuff like that. So what we like to do is, you can have what we refer to as a throwaway shock, which is a steel like emulsion type shock. It's there to help control wheel travel and body movement, but we eventually have to make sure that shock is up to par. So whether we have a dump truck or a really small like Nissan family car, the technology and the DNA is in there completely. We do different options where we are offering internal floating pistons to help keep fluid and air separated. And then we offer different diameters and different fitments for what people intend to doing. As you see above me, we're not going to be doing this in a family sedan or even an on-road car, but what a damper is supposed to be doing, I want it to do the same on-road as I want it off-road, and I want it to be ready to take on any hit that we bring it.
Okay. I think most people could figure out that the application is going to be very different between a grocery getter on the street and off-road racing. Mm-hmm. Is it just the amount of suspension travel that we need to worry about and the size of those hits that we're running through? What are the challenges for off-road suspension?
What I like to tell people is suspension is the first thing you need to think about, and it's typically the last thing you do to your vehicle. So when we look at someone who wants to just have a little bit more comfort going down a dirt road or a 2-track on their way to like a camping spot, something like that, we have a shock for that. If you want to go a little bit faster and you want to carry more weight or you want to have more wheel travel, that's you just have to think about what you're going for. Now that shock can be a packaging nightmare in terms of I want to put a giant, external reservoir or internal bypass, and
it's not going to fly on every vehicle, correct?
So that's where it comes down to that fitment. If I have that everyday passenger car, it is a shock absorber, it's a damper doing the job. But when I would go to the off-road segment, I have a little bit more liberty to go and get something bigger in there. And it really comes down to how do I want to drive that vehicle? What are my expectations? I have a sliding scale. There's limitations.
Let's assume that most of our listeners, followers, watchers are more on the performance-orientated side of things. So comfort, getting your caravan to the campsite, probably not a big consideration. We want to hit some big whoops at 100 plus mile an hour. Now the challenge is, I'm assuming a lot of this is going to come down to managing the heat that you're then putting into the fluid and have to get rid of.
Correct. Yeah. So with the shock absorber, friction equals heat. Heat equals a lot of degradation to shock. So if we start in our first setup, which is a performance series, it's a 2-inch diameter shock. It does a great job. But as we go with a larger diameter body, 2.5, and start to have external reservoirs, remote reservoirs, it helps dissipate that heat. So with more surface area, gets more dissipation of heat. With more surface area also means more volume of fluid, which dissipates that heat. So in this sense, bigger is better. And it goes back to that point of packaging. If I can get as big of a shock to fit in the corner of a vehicle, that's the goal, because that means I have a much more broad temperature range. That smaller shock, I have a temperature range, but I can't exceed that. This will do a great job, but it's also not going to hold up to something like a trophy truck doing.
It's all relative.
It's all relative, and it's that sliding scale. So you can put a very big shock on there and maybe not need all that performance, but you don't have to worry about overdoing it with that.
Most sort of street and road race people probably don't really give too much of a thought to the heat being generated and the fluid inside of the damper. Can you give us a sense of what is an upper limit for the temperature we're comfortable with seeing, at which point the performance of the damper is going to start degrading?
There's really no degree that says like once you hit that point, it's game over. On a trophy truck shock, which is behind us here, we're seeing up to 400 degrees of temperature, which is a lot. You could cook a piece of meat on that. But when we look at here, something like this is a finned reservoir that helps go on that, dissipate that heat. There isn't a specific degree that is too much, but as you go through the weight of the vehicle, how rough the road is, it's just going to degrade.
Now, you've talked about the diameter of the shock affecting the surface area, which is important for cooling. Obviously, the volume of fluid that can be contained in the damper also increases. I'm assuming there's a knock-on effect with bigger is stronger as well.
Yeah, so again, you get more material there. So what's behind us is a 3-inch diameter shock. So again, we have a thicker wall, we just have more surface area, we have more metal and material in there, so it just helps. We have larger diameter shafts. So again, it just helps support what we're trying to do more, but then it also comes down to the packaging of, can I fit that in that space? With race applications, trucks, off-road trucks, it's a jungle gym with wheels.
Yes, at that point, everything's custom, so a lot more flexibility in the fitment.
Exactly.
In terms of the bypass, which is something you've brought up a couple of times, you've mentioned internal and external bypass.
Correct.
So give us a little bit more understanding of what those terms mean and how this affects the operation of the damper.
Yep. So as a piston moves inside of a shock, it is going through a consistent column of oil. When we look at an emulsion shock, or what we refer to as a throwaway shock, you throw it away when you're done with it, you have foam going in there. You can compress a gas, you can't compress a fluid. And when it hits those dense pockets of fluid and those not so dense pockets of air, you get cavitation and bottoming out. If I have a very fast inches per second movement on that shock, that fluid needs to go somewhere, and it'll find the path of least resistance. So a bypass allows that fluid to bypass the main piston to alleviate that pressure, but still do its job. So an external bypass is a tube that hangs off the side of the body of the shock. An internal bypass is a secondary inner tube that has that port and a flat spring, and it's just a packaging. Again, it's a packaging thing that I say time and time again is an external bypass has a little bit of noise to it. It's a much bigger shock. Internal bypass, a little bit quieter, and allows me to fit that into an OE application.
So if I'm breaking down what you're saying correctly and understanding it, this is similar to in a high-end road race damper, we might have an adjustable blow-off valve,
Correct.
which only comes into play when we have a very high wheel speed. So maybe
Correct.
running a curb or something.
Yep.
In the off-road world, though, when you have a very high wheel speed, maybe landing a jump or hitting
Yeah.
whoops.
So external bypasses are key for high-speed wheel movements. And so there's two forms of compression that we talk about. Low-speed compression, which is chassis movements, and then high-speed compression, which is wheel movements. That needs to be controlled. So if I'm on flat level ground, undulation, pretty consistent movement of that shock. The inches per second that shock shaft is moving, very controllable. Now, if it's a G out or a moment to where I leave the ground and my next hit is going to be very hard, that's where the external bypass comes in. And yeah, it is essentially like a blow-off valve. It's allowing that pressure to be dissipated without exploding what it's trying to work on.
Yeah. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Another technology I want to talk about is your live valve. So give us sort of a high-level view of what that is and how that operates.
Yeah, so a live valve system is a semi-active shock adjustments. So it is speaking to the CAN bus network, specifically on our Ford Raptor. We work with...
So this is an OE replacement application for the Ford Raptor, and that's the only OE application you're currently supporting?
So currently, live valve speaks to that CAN bus network, and we work directly with Ford to get steering wheel input, throttle position, and then there's an inertia measurement unit for pitch and yaw. And so that is telling our shocks what to do in terms of opening and closing the compression. Now, if I manually could do that, I'm doing this with my fingers on a knob. I'd have to get out of the vehicle, set that, and go for it. What live valve does is it instantaneously does that based on an algorithm. So it's making predictive measurements of this vehicle is going very fast. I bet we need to have more high-speed compression. So currently, on an OE platform for on-road for trucks, it's only with Raptor, Ford Raptor, but we have it in a multitude of partners in the power sports industry. But it is feeding all that information from the chassis, BCM, and CAN bus network and telling the shock what to do, opening and closing that compression.
So essentially a dumber version of the old active suspension technology they used to run in F1. Much, much simpler, granted, but basically doing all of these changes that you physically can't do from the driver's seat yourself. How quickly can it make valving adjustments?
About 200 times a second. So what we're looking right now is we offer an aftermarket kit, which has external cooling and a little bit more diameter for the Ford Raptor. But what the Ford Raptor does from the OE standpoint is it's been live valve, single valve, which is just compression, since 2019. And then now that we've gone into the Gen 2 Raptor, now that the Ford 2024 Gen 3 Raptor has dual live valve, which is doing rebound and compression.
Okay, so that's essentially got its own OE version of your live valve. So then you can take the factory suspension, unbolt it, put in the Fox aftermarket kit, and that's going to retain that live valve, but with your valve. So I guess for the Ford Raptor owner, what are they going to notice from the driver's seat if they upgrade from the OE suspension to Fox live valve?
Yeah, so what they'll notice is just a little bit of different tune from our engineers, and then they will get external cooling. So they will get a finned reservoir, external remote for the rear as well as the front, And then it just allows them to have a little bit more diameter for more cooling potential. And if that person's saying like, hey, I want to just go a little bit faster off-road and do a little bit more, that's what our system does. It doesn't change the way a live valve reacts because I am plugging that into the system and speaking exact same. It's just, again, more bigger is better. So more fluid capacity, a bigger reservoir, dual hoses. So that fluid goes one way into the reservoir, into the radiator, and cools itself coming back out. So
again, basically, bigger is better, more cooling, can go faster over rough ground for longer, and the suspension's still going to keep working.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the OE application, but again, this can be fitted to, sort of a bespoke off-road race truck that's being built. How would you control that live valve and that application?
So in something in our racing platform, so like I said, the shocks need to speak to a CAN bus network to get all the information. It's very hard to go and tap into a different OE manufacturer because we don't know what the truck's going to do. With an off-road application that is a trophy truck or an off-road racer, it's a MoTeC system. So we can tell it's a standalone engine management. And with MoTeC, you can ask it to read different parameters of the vehicle's operating system. So I need you to read throttle position, steering wheel position, and then we install that inertia measurement unit. So again, I refer to these things as jungle gyms with wheels and tires. It doesn't know what it is. And so I can then say, this is what you weigh, this is how much wheel travel you have, and then this is what type of information I need from the vehicle to make this ride. So we can have this trophy truck that's behind us, has all of the same principles as a Ford Raptor, but again, that capability is night and day. 140 miles an hour through 3-foot whoops for 21 hours straight versus a Ford Raptor. I can go to school, I can go to the grocery store, I can also go on a dirt road very fast. Limitations, but same live valve technology.
In terms of the trophy truck application, the way the MoTeC or the ECU in general, even if it wasn't MoTeC, is integrated, that's just passive. It's just sending out the information that the Fox, I'm assuming there's an ECU involved with the damper. So all that's getting is those things like throttle position.
Two-way communication. So it's saying this is how fast I'm moving inches per second. And then therefore it's building that algorithm to predict the next setting that it needs.
So talking about that prediction, we talked a little bit off camera. So just talk us through the likes of the truck gets airborne. How does the live valve respond to that?
So if I'm going on a fairly smooth terrain, the shocks are fairly open. There's less restriction in terms of the compression and the rebound. If it goes into something that we refer to as jump mode, what will happen is once it feels all four wheels go fully drooped out and the shocks are fully extended, it will make that predictive tune and say rebound needs to be adjusted so that it doesn't pogo stick when I land, and compression needs to be turned up so that that next hit is very hard and supple. Now, if I tried to tune that specifically for that one hit, I could get out of the cab and I could turn all the dials and it's fine, but then it would ride horribly.
Now, you mentioned at the moment you're only supporting that Raptor and the OE applications. Is it safe to assume there's going to be other models coming in that truck market?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of OEs that are looking at what we do. Raptor has been the only OE platform that we offer live valve. And again, it's the only offering that we have for an aftermarket solution because it's plug and play. And that's in terms of what we refer to the truck market. Now, in the aftermarket solution and the OE solution for power sports, a lot. But we're working on how do we get someone's Toyota or how do we get someone's Ram? They're always asking us, how do I add live valve? And it's like, you get a vehicle that has live valve and then we have some options there because it takes a lot. But there's always going to have that question of like, how do I add it to my vehicle? So it's a thought.
Can't keep all of the people happy all the time. Look, Dane, great to get some insight into those products and get a bit of a more thorough understanding. If people do want to find out more, perhaps get hold of some suspension for their truck, how they're best to do that.
Yeah, so ridefox.com. We have multiple drop-down menus to find out what vehicle we have that we have shocks for, and then any Ford, Polaris, Kawasaki, things like that. But ridefox.com is where you can get all of our information for shocks.
Perfect. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome, man.
If you like that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. We release a new video every week. And if you like free stuff, we've got a great deal for you. Click the link in the description to claim your free spot to our next live lesson.